Well, welcome back to the 2017 Chief Executive Candidates debate. And here we will be talking about livelihood. Metro Radio. Mr. Wu, the government's resources allocated to education has always been the highest. However, there are still a lot of criticisms among students and parents. Why is that? Why are they aggrieved, and how would you help them? Well, parents and students are not happy because, first of all, there is a primary 3 TSA, the territory-wide systems assessment, and they have been drilled, the students, creating a lot of burden for the parents, for the students, as well as for the teachers. But the schools, nevertheless, have to go through this TSA. So my first proposal is to abolish the TSA for primary 3. As for primary 6 TSA, we can debate that later on because the students are relatively older. As for the teachers, they think that the professional qualification is not recognized and respected. The teachers, there are graduate teachers and certificate teachers, but the Hong Kong government's budget is such that schools can employ teachers, but very often you have 20 seconds, Mr. Zhang. Everybody knows that there are different assessments and they have different objectives. So what you are saying is that you abolish the TSA at primary 3 level. So what would you propose to take its place so that we know what levels the P3 students have attained? Well, Mr. Zhang, if you say so, why don't we have assessments for kindergarten students? If you want to assess at every stage the skills or attainment of students, do we start from kindergarten in that case? No. Not everything needs to be assessed. Kindergarten children in the schools, they learn to play, learn to socialize with friends. And I think P3 is basically too young for the students to have that kind of burden put on them. Ms. Lam, I think for students and parents, their dissatisfaction stems from the lack of diversity in the learning that we have, because young people and children have a diversity of talents, not just one. So what do you think about vocational education? Well, for vocational education, I think perhaps in Form 3, with 3 to 4 years remaining, these Form 3 students, where they think that their academic attainment is not that strong, they can opt for vocational training so that they can have a skill.
Next, DHK Wong Ming-Hei. Your question is for Mr. Zhang. Mr. Zhang, you said people in Hong Kong are worried that the division version 2 will become the CE. After the Occupy Central, have you noticed that division is becoming more and more serious, and why? If you were elected, why do you think that compared with the 2 other candidates, you have the ability to repair the division? For many years, I have been able to talk to people from different political parties, and this communication is very important because we have the understanding, we know what is happening, we know each other's position, and they are willing to participate because they would like to, improve our society. Very often we have division because many people believe that many of the things that we do now are not very fair. For example, we have let's say in LegCo, every time LegCo meets, whenever the government commands sufficient number of votes, we will go ahead. And many people are not happy with that. So in respect of these this situation, shouldn't we have discussion with the LegCo members and arrive at a consensus before we implement our initiatives. So I think we could, choose to discuss these issues in a more harmonious atmosphere. Mrs. Lam, I don't think politics is not the only way to eliminate the division. We have division in our society, and that has to some extent to do with our livelihood. For example, young people are not getting the upper mobility, and the wages are not catching up with inflation. So I'd like to ask Mr. Zhang what he proposed to do improve the opportunity for upward mobility for young people. Well, I think there's always a political solution. Over the last few years, we've done a lot in the field of welfare and livelihood, and we've increased our spending on welfare by almost 60% in recent years. On education, again, we've increased our spending substantially, but that has not really helped, reduce the division. This is a political issue. We must therefore find a solution from the political angle, and there is no other way. Therefore, I hope that the next administration will be headed by a CE who has the support of the people of Hong Kong. Mr. Wu, Mr. Zhang, you also agree that we need political reform. Would you propose that we would conduct political reform outside the August 31 framework? The August 31 framework is part of our law, and you cannot avoid that. But I'm proposing that we should start political reform as soon as possible, because that is also the expectation of the people. But I hope that we should have constitution without any pre-established, position. We should collect the views of the people and reflect them accurately to the CPG. During this time, we must also communicate more with the central government and try to find some ground for us to be able to deal with political reform in a flexible manner, and that everybody will agree, and that we can proceed smoothly. Mrs. Lam, at the beginning you said that you've had a lot of feelings about the campaign. Thus far in the campaign, and when you're facing the public, what do you think is your major weakness and shortcoming? And if you were elected, how are you going to make up for that shortcoming? I always reflect on this question myself, because recently I've been fully committed to my work. I'm worried that even as far as how to build up my personal image and communicating with the people, I've not really done enough. And my electioneering work in the last 2 months, I said I've learned a lot, including the fact that I need to learn once again how to communicate with the people. So long as I have put aside my public duties, and when I have the time, I've discovered that I'm also a very friendly person. I can still talk to the people, and every time I go to the district, I have a very happy experience. Members of the public will come forward and greet me and cheer me up and reflect me about the issues they think our society is facing, and that they hope the CE will be able to help them resolve these issues. I have also written down in my platform all the views I've heard from them. Mrs. Lam, you said that you have some friends from the financial sector, and I don't seem to have any such friends. But on your team, there are many property developers as well. How can you avoid people to have the impression that if you were elected, there would be collusion? How are you going to repay those people who helped me? During this campaign, I have not owed anyone anything. So if I were fortunate to become the next CE, I will work on the basis of the greatest interest of Hong Kong. Among the subsectors in the election committee, we have the industrial sector, among which you have there are developers, and those developers also would like to have a CE who will get things done and resolve our problems. Because in recent years, Hong Kong seems to have lagged behind. So the developer support for me is based on this consideration, I think. John Zhang, I understand, Kerry, that you work very hard, you're a very hard worker. But you also know that it is important for us to face the public. So I'd like to ask you this question. Why is it that every time you go to the district and meet the people, you need to mobilize so much police force? I thought that this was allocated to the 3 candidates that we get police escort. But during the last 4.5 years of the current administration, I believe that the district forum that I attended, forum held at at the district level, I'm the one who attended the most of such fora, and during which I would be able to be in contact with citizens, whereas John would typically be working behind closed doors and communicate with the public through the keyboard. So whoever became the CE, I'm sure that he should be able to leverage on all the channels of communication with the people. Next, we're going to have questions from the audience. Again, we'll pick 6 members from the audience to ask questions. C31, questions from Wu Kok Heng. C32, B22. And question for John Zhang, B38.
B12
and B12. And for Mrs. Lam, A39. And A25. We will start with questions from Mr. Wu Kok Heng, C32. Yes. Well, the Treasury has 9,000 billion. Where are you going to place the money? We have $900 billion at the Treasury. Where are you going to place the money? Other than moving the affluent tenants from the public housing units, what else? We have reserves of more than 900 billion. That is more than 2 years of Hong Kong's public expenditure. Hong Kong doesn't need to accumulate so much money. If the money is not spent, it's wasted. We need to use it. I think we should keep about reserve sufficient to equivalent to half a year to a year's expenditure. I'm more in favor of universal pension scheme. That is one way government could, place some of the money. And whereas for expenditure on labor welfare and education, I think we need to spend more on those areas so that people at the grassroots level would benefit. Time's up. B22. Again, questions from Mr. Wu. Some of the developed sites like vacant schools and industrial buildings, you cannot change the land use. So if you have the opportunity to become the CE, do you have any plans to amend the legislation so that we can change the land use and increase land supply? I think we can consider that cautiously. For example, some industrial buildings are not being used at all. Some people are using them as subdivided flats. So long as we can satisfy, so it's not very safe at the moment. So we need to, plan carefully and convert these industrial buildings to, for example, premises for young people to engage in innovative, businesses. We should consider carefully expand the use of such industrial buildings. A question for John Zhang. Mr. Zhang, 5 years from now, how do you see the relationship among Hong Kong people, the relationship between Hong Kong people and the mainland people, and the relationship between Hong Kong and the mainland? What sort of specific changes do you envisage? I hope that 5 years from now, people who originally intended to emigrate and had not are glad that they have not emigrated. I hope that our whole society will become a more harmonious one, and that all of us will be proud of this city. I believe that our relationship with the Central People's Government will not deteriorate or will not be a bad one. And I'm sure our relationship with the people in the mainland will become better and better. Only if we were harmonious would we not see so much of the conflicts, and because many conflicts, come from within our own city. B12 for John Zhang. Mr. Zhang, when young people want to apply for public housing, they're not qualified. If you want to buy properties, they don't have the means. If you became the CEO, how are you going to help these people? I know that many young people very much want to own their own properties, and we can see that the household size in Hong Kong now is becoming smaller and smaller. In the old days, you could have 3 generations living under the same roof. Nowadays, it's even very uncommon for 2 generations to live together. So we are now having more and more households demanding housing. And since land is so scarce in Hong Kong, we have to work hard to create more land, and on such land we can build more housing units so that we can provide sufficient housing for those in need, including the young people. Next, A25, question for Mrs. Lam. Mrs. Lam, I have a simple question. That is about universal retirement protection. This is a favorite topic for the people of Hong Kong. Can you promise that this can be implemented very soon? I think we've been conducting consultation on universal pension scheme. The SAR government has already put forward a proposal to secure all the major pillars of retirement protection, especially retirement protection supported by public funding. There will be a proposal, that is the old age allowance. We will have an enhanced version of old age allowance where eligible elders can collect more than $3,000. For those who are receiving $2,000, we will increase the threshold for the means test. After we have done both, our estimate is that for all senior citizens over the age of 65, more than 50% of them will benefit from this proposal. We hope we will be able to provide a more secure retirement, for old people. Again, for Mrs. Lam, we have many people taking part in rallies and Occupy Central. As the former chief executive, do you think you were responsible? If you became CEO, what would you do to prevent the recurrence of Occupy Central? And if it should happen again, would you resign?
Thank you very much for your question, allowing me the opportunity to do some explanation, because John, in another occasion, had said that because I failed in political reform and therefore bringing on the Occupy Central movement. But in fact, the 3 persons who started the Occupy movement was then already planning on the Occupy movement, and they thought that through this kind of action, they could bring on a social or political reform. That's the reason, background. And I think we should learn a lesson from this incident. We should step up with communication with the public of Hong Kong and also the young people, and to bring them into the consultation and into the government. Now, we have 2 minutes now for each of the candidates to raise questions to each other concerning livelihood. Carrie. The people of Hong Kong, their assessment and evaluation of public servants, very often they don't just look at what we say and do, but look at what we are able to achieve or not. Now, in the past few years, very often you start off with something, but you don't follow through. Now, I'll give you some examples and see how you respond to them. For instance, you have talked a lot about the indigenous people's small houses. Now you're silent on that, and you're saying extending the Star Walk along the harbor, and it had elicited certain queries concerning government and business collusion, and then you shirked on that. And then the Palace Museum, which is a good thing, but the process, the procedure, how you handled it, it became bad from what is good, and it also adversely affected in great ways the image of the central government in the minds of the Hong Kong people. What do you say? Well, for indigenous housing, meeting, I raised that when I was the Secretary for Development, and my support and popularity shot up because of that. But in fact, the latest follow-up work is a subordinate of his as Financial Secretary. It's his area. As for the Star Promenade, it is not an issue of collusion. Well, I heard you. But there are other examples I want to raise. For example, the West Wing, it's supposed to become of the CGO, the Central Government Office in Hong Kong. It was supposed to be reformed into an industrial building, but then because of criticism, and then you said you want to set up a religious bureau. Well, I would, in my session, talk about alleviating poverty. In the past year and years, the members of the Alleviation of Poverty Commission have come up with a lot of good achievements with hard work, and it seems that the negative income tax is something that is in the platform of John Tsang's, but in fact that's already been done. That's already in place, and that is the working family subsidy. And in fact, last year it was introduced for this low-income working family subsidy, which is much like the negative income tax, which is practiced overseas. In fact, the Poverty Alleviation Commission had looked into the negative tax, but the Tax Bureau was not in agreement to it because they say it would complicate the tax regime of Hong Kong. So I do not know why John Tsang still has this in his platform. Isn't that being outdated? That's exactly why in the past few years we have come up with many, many different new welfare measures. And the scheme therefore becomes very complicated. Hold on. It is about the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing. Different departments do not know what the other department is doing. Because I want to help the needy. I do not mind doing more work to help the needy. Can you tell us about your negative income tax, how it's going to be implemented? There will be one organization which will handle all the different times up. Mr. Wu. Mrs. Lam. Sorry, Mrs. Lam, I said Mrs. Chang. Sorry, it's Mrs. Lam. Mrs. Lam, in West Kowloon Palace Museum, you're bringing that in, but you did not follow the law in consulting the public. And in handling universal pension scheme, you asked Mr. Nelson or Professor Nelson Chow to do the study, and there was a consultation, and you threw the report into the waste paper bin, disregarded it. In these two incidents, we can see that this is false consultation. You actually do not do real consultation. You make your own decisions on the basis of your own opinion and slap that on the Hong Kong people, not allowing the Hong Kong people to speak up. How do you respond to that, please? In the past 10 years, whatever post I take up, I very much pay attention to public consultation and public opinion, and there are many examples of this. For the pension scheme, yes, Professor Chow had given us a consultation report. I referred to the report. Hold on. You say it's a consultant's report and you've referred to it, but you have then disregarded it altogether. And then you got another consultancy to do another round of consultation. You asked that consultancy to change the report. Hold on. You're a member of the judiciary. Speak only when you have the evidence and proof. What other report? What other consultants? There is a consultancy firm. I heard that. Oh. So how do you explain? Because I haven't done that. I do not have to explain. If all the consultants' reports equals government policy, that would not do.